When Valorant was released, Breach seemed like he would become a mainstay in the game, especially on a higher level. His ability to flash through walls seems incredibly strong in a tactical shooter, and Breach was every Counter-Strike support player's wet dream. Now, a few years into Valorant, Breach has one of the lowest pick rates out of all agents, dropping down to pretty much 0 on some maps, and he generally feels like he's almost forgotten. Breach, similar to Harbor, is a very one-sided agent, as in all his abilities do very similar stuff and have the same gimmick. However, Harbor's abilities are exactly what you expect from his class. He's a controller and he has smokes. He might not be able to do a lot of other things, but he for sure does a ton of controller things. Breach, on the other hand, has a bunch of similar abilities, but unlike all the other initiators, none of them can collect any info. I mean, he still does his job as an initiator by disabling enemies and forcing them out of position, which gives his team an opening. However, he can't do any scouting, so if that's something you want, and most teams very much want that, witnessed by the fact that there are barely any Breach solo initiators in pro play, you either have to play another initiator instead, or you have to play Breach in combination with another initiator, usually Sova or Fade. This, however, means that if you don't want to play without an agent of every class, which once again most teams don't want, your composition is mostly locked in. If someone picks Breach, the team is pretty much asked to pick a Sova or Fade to provide information, and a Chat Neon or Raze to follow up on Breach's engagements, plus a controller and a sentinel. And let's just say, if an agent forces you to either play without what most players consider a stable team comp, or forces the entire team into certain roles, none of which is Reyna, he won't be especially popular in competitive solo queue. But team composition is not the only problem with Breach, so let's take a closer look at his own kit. Breach completely revolves around one gimmick, using his abilities through walls. He has 3 of the game's most basic ability archetypes, a flash, a stun, and a molly, but all of them are not thrown, but activated through walls instead. His ult is another way bigger stun, which, once again, ignores walls. There's a lot to unpack here. For once, Breach's abilities are pretty situation map dependent. While it is nifty and unique that you can aftershock and flash walls with no opening inside, it also takes a lot of flexibility away. Breach's aftershock can push enemies out of angles where they wouldn't expect any other molly without a wide lineup, but unlike other mollies, it can be quite hard to use for just quickly broken a choke point or mollying a smoke. A similar thing with his flashes. They have unique positions for sure, but it's pretty much impossible to make them undodgeable since they can't be thrown in a way that makes them pop directly behind a corner. They just take a constant time to pop and then either someone dodges them or not, but you don't really have much influence on that. His stun technically doesn't need walls, but if you don't just want to get shot, it does. So Breach's entire utility is quite dependent on having good spots for it, because otherwise it can't be used at all, or it's just inferior and less flexible than comparable abilities from different agents. All of this makes Breach extremely map dependent to the point of being arguably straight out a bad choice on some maps. A related issue is that Breach's abilities tend to feel a little similar. His flash flashes through walls, his stun stuns through walls, his ult is a big version of his stun. They all have their uses and the use cases do admittedly differ, but there's not too much combination potential between them. I mean, sure, you can stun aftershock or dump multiple stuns and flashes into something, but if you don't peek off your first util, but throw more util instead, you usually don't even see what your util does, so with no info abilities, you're pretty much just staring at a wall and hoping for the best. This is also one of the reasons Breach is one of the least flashy agents in the game. When you have a cool set play centered around Breach, even if it is successful and it only works because of his unique util, it still often ends with Breach staring into a wall while a Raze or something frags out. And this is one symptom of what I consider to be the main problem keeping Breach from popularity. He's incredibly team focused, maybe more than any other agent in the game. And yes, of course you can swing off your own Breach util. The thing is just that the more you do it, the more value you leave on the table. Let's look at the flashes since they're the easiest to compare. All agents pay the same for their pop flashes, however Breach flash is comparably easy to dodge. So if a Phoenix and a Breach both throw their 250 credit flash and peek off it, the Breach flash is going to be dodged more often, the Breach player is therefore going to die more often. Breach pays the same for flash that is easier dodged than all other pop flashes and less flexible to use than most of them. You pay extra for being able to flash in unique positions for your teammates. If you don't coordinate with them, you just leave value on the table and would be better off playing another agent. And a lot of players don't enjoy comms or just don't trust their teammates. By that logic, Breach should flourish in higher skill lobbies and pro play, where players communicate more and have a better intuitive understanding of how to play with every agent's utility. And to a certain extent that is the case. Breach has a higher pick and win rate and higher elo, and is more popular in pro play than competitive solo queue. However, there's another problem with Breach that reveals itself in higher skill games. Stuns kind of suck. They do slow you, throw off your aim and keep you from spraying, but they don't damage you and don't keep you from one-tapping someone. If you have good aim, you can get off the first shot pretty much the same as if you weren't stunned. That might not matter much in bronze lobbies, but the better players get, the more often they actually hit that shot. This gets to the point where pro players stand a very considerable chance when peaked while stunned. Imagine this pretty common scenario. You locate an enemy, successfully stun them with Breach and send in your duelist to kill them while your team covers them from the enemy team. However, your duelist just gets one-tapped. You used Breach exactly as intended and made no mistakes, but you down the first kill just because the enemy shot first, which is kind of a coin toss and completely out of your control as Breach. Similar stuff can happen with people getting random kills through smokes and flashes too, but it's just way too likely with stuns against high skill players. And keep in mind that both Breach's recovering signature ability and his ultimate don't do anything but stun. Just not very practical to have 2 out of 4 abilities which are that unreliable in the very games of the skill level that Breach is designed for. So what should Riot do about Breach? Is he fine? Does he just need number adjustments to buff him? Or an actual rework? In my opinion, a lot of Breach's shortcomings are actually quite acceptable. With more and more agents coming to the game, it's just unrealistic that everyone is popular in every map and with every playstyle. And even if that was possible, what would be the point of having different characters then anyway? Breach has some clearly better and worse maps, which is alright. He also fits the niche of an initiator of supporting utility for pushes and set plays pretty well. However, it's problematic that half of his abilities are stuns, which get increasingly worse with higher player skill, but his whole kit is dependent on communication, which makes him dependent on higher skill lobbies. Stuns currently have a fundamental problem and Breach suffers the most from it. In order to fix Breach, Riot needs to either make stuns more reliable against high skill players, or make Breach less dependent on stuns. I personally would drastically reduce the fire rate debuff and stunned, and debuff the damage of stunned players instead. If you balance those numbers correctly, you could still fight while stunned and punish sloppy attempts to kill you, but stunned players won't just one-tap anyone anymore as if nothing happened. This would make follow-ups on stuns way less of a coin toss when playing well, and would give stunned players a solid average fighting chance, instead of requiring an all or nothing that is extremely hard for most of the player base to hit. However, that's just a quick idea from my side. I'm pretty sure Riot could come up with something better if they tried to actually fix the stun issue. Let me know in the comments what you think about the stun thing and Breach in general. What do you think keeps him from being popular? Should he be changed, and if so, how? Also, let me know what agent you want me to talk about next.